In a 38-year marriage, how does a husband confront his wife's betrayal and the indifference of his entire family? When he realizes he's become the outsider in his own home, how will he rebuild his life? Loyalty and betrayal are intertwined in this family, with a truth too incredible to believe. Subscribe now and delve into this suspense-filled story. The heavy rain stopped our golf game just after it started, my buddies, and I lingered outside the clubhouse for a bit, hoping the rain would let up, but it became clear that it wouldn't. I was disappointed because I really enjoyed playing and it was the best source of exercise for the week. Of course, my activity was limited not only by heart disease at 62, but such activities would be limited anyway. I was still in good shape. I watched what I ate and still did most of the work in the yard of the modest home I shared with my wife of 38 years, Mary, so I found myself walking through my door a little after 8:00 a.m. rather than the 12:00 or so I usually got home. I didn't warn my wife about my early arrival. I didn't see the need for this and had never done this before. When something like this happened, I would simply explain when I got home, but I quickly forgot about why I came earlier as soon as I opened the front door, because my wife was standing there in the hallway. She was wearing a blue silk robe, but it was open in the front, exposing her large saggy breasts. This in itself would not have raised questions, but in this form. She accompanied a man younger than our daughter to the front door at 57. Mary was still a very attractive woman. She wore shoulder-length blonde hair. Her breasts had always been large, but they became even larger when our daughter was born 35 years ago, although they remained about the same. When Sam joined the family 3 years later, as you'd expect from a middle-aged woman, her fifth place in the belly had gained some weight over the years, but it didn't matter to me, and apparently it didn't matter to this guy either. She raised her head when I walked through the door, and instead of the guilty shy look I expected, she smiled, as always expressing her happiness that I was home. Then, to my surprise, she came forward to greet me. "Hello, honey, you came home early." Mary moved to kiss me, but I managed to quickly move my head to the side. My wife looked at me in confusion. "Are you out of your mind, Mary? It's better not to know where your mouth was, although I have a pretty good idea of where it was," I explained. Mary looked back at the young man, seeming to forget I was there and realizing what she had almost done. "Oh, John, of course I'm sorry, honey. This is James. This is my husband." John James was perhaps an inch under 6 feet, but he had the well-developed physique of an active young man in his 20s or 30s. He was probably an athlete in college and maybe still is. He had dark brown hair, cut short, and a simple face, neither handsome nor ugly. He stepped forward and his hand landed on my shoulder. I was tempted to respond physically but resisted. "For now, nice to meet you. Mary has told me a lot about you, and don't worry, I'm sure in 25 or 30 years I'll have the same hardware problem as you, and I hope I'll be as relaxed about it as you are." Of course, what I missed most was night with Mary. The problem is age, but we had intimate toys and I thought that everything was fine with us intimate. Turned out, not in response to James's slight smile. I bared my teeth. Who the hell was this guy to be so condescending to me? But I didn't want to go to jail, so I restrained my art. "James, get out of my house, and if I catch you in it again, I will kill you. I have a weapon." The small smile suddenly disappeared from James's face as he took a step back and then walked around me to the front door. "Hey, that's cool, man. I got the impression that you don't mind." I locked the door after it was closed, took a quick glance at my wife and headed to my bedroom. I was incredibly angry and confused that my wife didn't seem to repent or even care about what had just happened. She entered the room shortly after me and I noticed that her robe was already buttoned. Well, that was rude. Mary turned to me, not believing that she saw any fault in her behavior after what she had just done. "It was rude of you to walk some guy. You obviously just had a night with to the door, and I was rude." Mary's face softened as she walked up to me and tried to put her hand on my shoulder, but I pulled away as soon as I felt her touch. "Darling, I'm sorry, but so much time has passed. What we were doing was good and I enjoyed it, but it just didn't meet my needs. Perhaps it would be a good idea to share this information with me. Where the hell did you find this guy? He's Margie's friend. He's twice her age, and at that time she was a single woman. When she met Oscar, she rejected him, but she and I talked about him and she gave me his information. Do you understand that he's just using you girls for easy intimate?" Actually, he explained that he likes older women. Mary replied when he was 18. His mother forced him to help the neighbor women around the house. Some of them couldn't afford to pay much, so they offered intimate. He says he got to the point where women his age didn't suit him, and even if he's just using me for the night, I'm doing the same thing. So what difference does it make? How long has this been going on? I asked. A few months. When you go golfing, he comes and takes care of me. He doesn't stay long and I clean everything up before you return. It won't affect you in any way. You get your exercises and I get mine, so to speak, Mary explained. I suddenly understood why Saturday became B and Chong Day. Well, I don't care if you think it doesn't concern me, just because I'm not here. I won't accept this and we give up golf. If I have to, John, please be smart about this. You need your golf game. This is the only physical activity you have, and I have needs that need to be met and that can be taken care of. At the same time, it makes sense maybe for you, Mary, but not for me. I responded firmly. It was the last time. With that, I walked into my bedroom to take a shower and change into something more casual. Mary reached into her closet to put on some clothes, then left the house and drove several miles to the house where Anna lived with her husband and 2 daughters, Mary's granddaughters. By the time I had showered and dressed, the house was empty. There was no note, so I figured my wife just wanted to get away from me. This suited me quite well since I wanted the same thing. The shower calmed me down and I tried to think logically. I could understand that Mary still had needs, but this was too much. I would never have done what she did if our positions had been reversed, and I didn't feel like I had crossed a line. She'll just have to deal with it the next day. Sunday was the 4th of July and the whole family gathered around the dinner table and then gathered again in the evening to go to a large public park for the fireworks display. This tradition had been going on since Anna was a child and I looked forward to it. Every year in the morning I began preparing the meat. I marinated chicken and hamburgers and set out hot dogs for the younger children who would join us for the celebration. By the time guests started arriving, everything was ready, and I was looking forward to spending time with my family. The barbecue went smoothly. There were lots of friends there and Mary looked radiant, smiling and laughing. I was of course upset that I found her with another man, but she had been a wonderful wife for 4 decades, and that was something I could forgive for once. As the guests began to leave the house, I excused myself and went to take a nap. Heart failure was limiting my stamina and I wanted to be ready to enjoy the fireworks tonight. I kissed my wife on the cheek, let her know that I was going to lie down for a while, and headed to the bedroom when the alarm rang a couple of hours later. I felt full of energy. The rest did me good and now I could calmly enjoy the fireworks. I changed into clean clothes and went into the living room. My immediate family sat around the dining table, my wife at the far end, my granddaughters Julia 19 and Allison 17 to the right. Anna's husband Eric sat to the side and Anna herself stood in front of the table close to me. My son Sam and his wife Rebecca sat on the other side of the table, opposite Julia and Allison. They all looked at me. I immediately realized that this was an intervention. What's the matter? My daughter Anna was apparently the spokeswoman for the group. We wanted to talk to you about Mom. I looked at my wife, but her expression was emotionless. I hoped it wasn't what I thought. I looked at my daughter again. What about Mom told us about James? She told me incredulously yes, and about your problems. I simply stared at my wife, shocked that she would share such personal information with anyone, let alone their children and grandchildren. My problems, like this whole story in general, do not concern you, but Mom's happiness is our business. I asked, addressing my wife directly. Yes, John, I'm happy. Please don't think it's not true. Mary replied, but she has needs, Dad. My daughter chimed in, and well, those are things you can't take care of. I mean, it's true, isn't it? So you think I'm being unreasonable selfish by not agreeing to this? We're not trying to put a label on it, Dad, we're just look. All we're saying is that since you can't do it, we think you should be more supportive of Mom quietly taking care of it herself. My daughter explained. I looked around at my family members. Each of them supported, or at least seemed to support, that my wife was allowed to cheat on me. I may not have changed physically, but in those few seconds I felt like I had aged 20 years. Mentally and emotionally, I had never felt like such a useless old man as I did now, and I said with difficulty, do you all think so? I looked them all in the eyes and they nodded in agreement, but I thought it was too easy for some to just agree. I wanted to be as sure as possible of this. Sam, do you agree with this? I asked, looking into my son's eyes. Yes, I mean it wouldn't be with you. My son replied, and it will help. Mom, Eric, I turned to my brother-in-law, Anna's husband. I had never seen him go against his wife, and I certainly didn't expect him to do so now. I don't think it'll be much of a problem. Eric, replied Rebecca. I caught Eric's eye. Oh, Dad. I'm not really, she said, trying to avoid answering. I always found it interesting that even after 20 years, Eric still called me by my first name, while Rebecca almost immediately began calling me Dad. Nonsense, Rebecca, you have been part of this family for 3 years now. Besides, you are a grown woman and I would be interested to know your opinion. I said, well, it seems everything will be all right. I mean, as long as she is careful and reserved. Rebecca said, looking at my granddaughters, they belong to a completely different generation, so I suspected that they had a completely different attitude towards this issue. Infidelity and marriage seemed commonplace, almost expected these days, but I still wondered if they would choose against me. They spent so many wonderful hours together. I often attended their performances and constantly pampered them at the mall. Would they really be against it? What about you, girls? Oh, Grandpa, we shouldn't be involved in this. Come on. You're both adults. Well, almost, and I'm sure you have some thoughts. Julia said, the eldest. Allison added. Mom and Dad seemed to encourage them to speak up. At that moment, I realized what they were going to say. Whether they believed it or not, their mother clearly convinced them to speak out in favor of their grandmother. Well, I mean, Julia continued. A lot of our friends are okay with their boyfriends and girlfriends dating other people. It's just a night. A ringing cry for the infidels. It's just intimate. I figured it would come out at some point, and it did, although I was surprised it took so long. My wife was willing to go to such lengths to get her away so she could have her boy toy once a week. I suddenly realized there was no point in arguing. She will most likely find a way to do this, regardless of my opinions or feelings. Everything that was before is gone and it will never come back. I looked at Mary, who was looking at me expectantly. That's all, Mary, majority rule. I think you'll get what you want. My wife's face lit up as if her heart's desire had been fulfilled, and perhaps it was. I simply turned and walked towards the front door. I had only walked a few feet before I heard my wife's voice calling my name. I hoped that maybe she would change her mind after seeing how it infected me and turn to face her. But this did not happen. Can I tell James that you were just joking about killing him? Certainly, as you say, I'm going for a ride. I replied, but Dad, Sam exclaimed, it's time to go to the fireworks. Go without me. I replied, I don't want to go anymore. It was quiet as I walked out the front door, but as soon as the door closed, I heard sounds of cheering. I looked back through the front window. The blinds were open and the curtains were hanging, and I saw Mary being hugged by all her supporters. It looked like they were in this together against me before the mini-holiday ended. Mary was already calling her lover on the phone. She would reassure him that she and I had discussed everything and he had withdrawn his objections. She wanted to make sure that he had not left for another woman and that she could still expect his visit. On Saturday morning, he picked up on the third ring and assured Mary that he would be there and looked forward to it. With that, the family piled into the car and headed out to watch the city's always impressive fireworks display. They talked and laughed, glad that the trouble was behind them and confident that I would be all right. Just as Eric was parking the car, I was sitting alone in my car, admiring the view of the city. I found this road into the nearby hills many years ago and came here when I needed to think I was hurt by the support Mary received from everyone in the family. I thought that at least one of them would admit that my inability to perform my duties was not a reason for my wife's infidelity, but they were united against me and it hurt. I felt like an outsider, like I was old and had been fired. It reminded me of the stories I had heard as a child of how some communities would send their elders to certain death when they felt they were too old or infirm to contribute and thus were simply taking away resources. I simply got in the way and was fed. All I wanted to do now was sleep, but daytime sleep got in the way. It was already past midnight. When I finally returned to the house, I noticed that my daughter's car was still there, along with Lindy's, but everyone else had already left. I suggested that the sound of the alarm indicating that the car was locked alerted the occupants of the house, because the front door opened. When I approached, it was Mary. "Where have you been? I worried so much." Mary simply walked past me without saying a word. I noticed that my daughter was sitting on the sofa and looking at me with interest. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Mom got worried when you weren't there after the fireworks. Everyone else had to be somewhere tomorrow morning, so I stayed with her. You could at least answer the phone." Mary looked at my phone and remembered that I had turned it off when I arrived at the hills. I didn't want to be bothered. "Well, as you can see, I'm fine, you can go home." Anna was stunned. Her father was the kindest and most polite person she knew, and she had never heard him talk like that to anyone, especially to her, his little daughter. She watched him as he walked into his bedroom until the door closed between them. Then she picked up her purse from the table and kissed her mother goodbye. By the time Mary finished cleaning the house and walked into the room, I was already asleep. The house was cool for the next week. Mary knew that, despite her silent agreement, I was not happy with what she was doing with James, but she believed that I could come to terms with it because I loved her, and she was sure that eventually I would forget about it, or at least put it out of my mind. For me, this was a complete destruction of my life. I was a devoted family man for 4 decades, but that didn't stop my entire family from casting me aside when my presence became inconvenient. The simple fact that Mary even sought support from her family over the affair was what I believed was the end of our marriage. Having every single one of them turn against me was a death blow to my family, or at least to the fact that I was part of it. I put everyone else first for years. Now, everything was about to change, like every Saturday morning for the past few years. I got into the car and drove to the country club to meet my foursome. This was a group of 8 older men who reserved 2 halves in a row and then mixed 4s each week. I tried my best to concentrate on the game, knowing what was happening in my house, and I had no doubt what was happening. It wasn't my worst performance, but it was my worst in a long time. I tried to smile at the good-natured ridicule, but it was not easy. Meanwhile, Mary stayed home and watched me get into the car and leave for a golf trip at 7 a.m. She tried to express her affection and kiss me goodbye, but I remained silent and barely allowed her to press her lips to my cheek. She hated the idea that her husband had been hurt, but she put it out of her mind. As soon as James pulled up to the footpath, she asked him to park further down the street and around the corner. She thought that parking in front of the house would be too provocative and would attract the attention of the neighbors, but there was nothing she could do about him coming to the door. She leaped a knock before opening the door and then invited him in. She was wearing only a robe and nothing else, and it ended up on the floor. Seconds after the door closed, they greeted each other with a long hot kiss, and then James easily scooped Mary up into his arms and carried her into the bedroom, placing her gently on the bed. James stepped back and undressed. Mary admired James's physique as he undressed. He wasn't overly muscular, but he was strong and in good shape, something I hadn't had in a long time, mostly due to age. Of course. Damn it, she thought, get him out of your head. This is not a competition. Their connection lasted about 2 hours. James showered while Mary made the bed and started the laundry. He helped her put new bedding on the bed and left Mary climbed into the shower herself and washed thoroughly. She knew it was hard for me, and it was important that nothing reminded me of it. By 12:30, Mary was more than satisfied that the house and her body were in pristine condition and ready for me, who should be home at any moment. She had enjoyed herself, had needs met, and was ready to devote all her attention to me for the rest of the week. I usually came home between 12:30 and 1 p.m. When I did not come by 2:00, she became alarmed, but not too much. Yet by 3:00, she began to worry and tried to call me on my mobile. The call went straight to voicemail by 5:00. After making several calls and sending several text messages with no response, she began to become very worried. Finally, at 7:00, after sitting for another 2 hours without an answer from her husband, she called her daughter. She explained the situation, and within minutes, Anna and her husband, along with Mary's granddaughters, were in the living room. Eric went to the country club to find out some information. All they could tell him was that I was there and left a few hours ago. Anna called the police and found out that there were no records of incidents involving me, and at this time they could not file an official missing person report, but they would write down my name in case they found out anything. Anna thanked them and hung up, not sure if anything would come of it. There was no one else to call. Mary didn't know any of the men I played golf with, let alone had any of their phone numbers. There was nothing to do but wait. It was almost 11:00 p.m. when Julia, sitting in front of the house, reported that she had just seen headlights coming into the driveway. Then, perhaps sensing a confrontation was imminent, she and her sister ran upstairs to their mom's old bedroom. Eric, who always got up early, had long since gone to bed in Sam's old room. Only Mary and Anna were left to face me. I walked through the front door, not surprised to see my wife breathing fire in the hallway, and only slightly surprised to see my daughter loitering in the living room. I had seen her car on the street, but I thought that perhaps she would leave me and Mary alone. She must be willing to do anything to make her mother look weird. "Where have you been?" Mary spat. "I was playing golf," I answered calmly. "No more than 12:00. You weren't there anymore." "This is true. After golf, I had lunch at the clubhouse. Their chicken piccata is pretty good. Then I went to see the new movie with Dwayne Johnson, a little cliché, but I liked it after that." "Damn it, John, I don't want to know all the places you went," Mary interrupted. "Well, you asked where I was." I reminded her. "I want to know why you didn't come home after golf like usual, and why you didn't answer your calls." "I didn't answer the calls because my phone didn't ring," I replied, showing my wife that my phone was turned off, "and I didn't come home because I didn't intend to be in this house at the same time as your friend." "This is funny, John. Nothing changed. We finished and I cleaned the whole house long before you finished golfing. There was no reason for you to come home late at all, let alone be out all day. You see, Mary, let me say again that I will not be in this house. At the same time, it's late now and I'm going to bed." I walked past my wife, looked closely at my daughter, but said nothing. As I walked into the bedroom, I expected one of the women to follow me, but none of them did. As I was getting ready for bed, I heard other voices in the corridor and realized that Anna's whole family had gathered in the house by the time. Mary said goodbye to everyone and walked into the bedroom. I was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. Mary couldn't be sure. She thought about waking me up so they could talk some more, but instead she just went to bed. The next weekend went pretty much the same way, although this time there were no calls or messages. Mary simply accepted that would be gone all day and took the opportunity to completely clean the house. However, Mary later began to worry about being left alone at home and called Anna, who agreed to come and keep her company until I returned home. Eric and their daughters remained at home. I arrived again around 11:00 a.m. and was surprised to see Anna's car parked at the curb. I wondered if another confrontation was brewing. I walked through the door only to be greeted by a pleasant greeting from my wife, a kiss on the cheek, and a smiling daughter in the background. "Why don't you change your clothes, love? Then you can tell me what you've been doing all day," Mary said, leaving me a little confused. Mary headed to the kitchen to get everyone a drink, while I went into the bedroom to change. The only conclusion I could draw was that she had been well taken care of by her lover today, so she was in a particularly relaxed and good mood. I changed into my pajamas and returned to the living room, where Anna seemed ready to leave, but was apparently waiting for me. "Dad, I know this is hard for you, but I just wanted to say how wonderful it is that you show your love for your mom by allowing her to do this. It really made a difference by letting her. I thought, is that how they see it? Now I want to tell you something, Anna," I said firmly. "This is the last conversation on this topic. Last, make sure everyone knows this. Of course, Dad, I understand it's hard to get it out of your head. If people talk about it all the time, I'll tell everyone." Anna reassured me with these words. She kissed me on the cheek and left a moment later. Mary came in with drinks for both of us. I thought it took her a long time to bring the drinks and wondered if it was planned, so Anna could tell me how wonderful I was. This went on for several months. Mary continued to enjoy a physical relationship with James, and I found myself experiencing and enjoying some new activities. I still played golf every Saturday morning and of course watched all the films that interested me, but at the same time I tried to diversify my activities. I played bowling, mini golf, and even tried my hand at arcade games. I wasn't very good at it, but I had fun. Life at home was quite normal. Although the topic of James was carefully avoided, every evening we dined together and had pleasant, albeit ordinary conversations. The closeness we shared changed. Mary, convinced that her relationship with James had no impact on our marriage, continued to express her love and affection to me. If she noticed that I rarely reciprocated her feelings, she did not say anything. Perhaps Mary had simply become too comfortable in this situation. Perhaps the fact that I didn't talk about James at all made her believe I was more okay with it than I really was. However, when Thanksgiving arrived, I was in for a shock. "Mom, James has arrived," Anna announced from the front of the house. I was sitting in a chair reading a newspaper when I heard this message. If I had been drinking anything, I would have spat it out on the floor. "Oh good," remarked my wife. I wasn't sure if he would definitely come. I pressed the lever that lowered the footrest and jumped out of the chair, which attracted Mary's attention. "What the hell is he doing here?" I spluttered, completely annoyed. "I invited him to Thanksgiving." Mary answered as calmly as possible. "He has no family in the city and he has nowhere to go. I told you that I won't be in this house at the same time as him. You know that's why I'm not home all day on Saturdays, and now you invite him to my house for a family holiday. This is my home too, John, and he doesn't come here for intimacy. It's no different than when the kids were growing up and their friends came over. It's just dinner and I expect you to be on your best behavior," Mary said firmly, effectively pushing me away and feeling proud of herself for standing up for herself. Well, they were lovers, sure, but she also considered James a friend, and it seemed to her that this was a completely appropriate gesture towards a friend. She met James at the door and introduced him to her children and their spouses, as well as her granddaughters, taking his hand. She led him into the living room to greet me. She started talking before she even turned the corner. "James, do you remember but I was no longer there, or at least not in the chair." I had occupied just a few minutes before she looked around but did not see me and assumed that I might have gone to the toilet. She headed to the bedroom when she heard the motor start to open the garage door. She made it to the kitchen garage door just in time to see the door begin to lower and my car drive away. "Was it Dad who left?" Anna asked her mother. "Yes, it was him. Where is he going?" "Who knows?" Mary replied irritably, heading to her bedroom to collect her thoughts. James approached Anna as Mary closed her bedroom door. "Is there anything I can do? Maybe it would be better if I left," he asked. "No, James, it's okay. This is your father's problem, not yours. You are always welcome here. I just don't want to cause any problems. But if you're sure, we know James and we appreciate it." Anna assured him the family and James bonded over food. James, as the new man, was the center of attention, but he also took an interest in the family. After the meal, he joined Sam and Eric to watch the football while the ladies went shopping. No one noticed my car drive by. The holiday was long over. It was approaching 10:00 in the evening. The house was cleaned, the dishes were washed, the ladies returned from a shopping trip with a few things, but nothing special. Sam and Eric fell asleep on the couch and I was still nowhere to be seen. Anna woke up her husband and children and told them to go home, intending to wait with her mother and stay the night. She always kept a few things here so that she could spend the night at her parents' house if necessary. Sam and Rebecca also left, and Anna was left to wait with her mother. I finally arrived almost at midnight. I hoped Mary had already gone to bed, but she was waiting for me. She began to advance towards me, but instead of stopping as I usually did, I simply walked past her. I walked over to my chair and continued reading the newspaper, as I had been doing before I was interrupted if I thought Mary would back down. I was wrong. "Where have you been all day?" she practically screamed. "I went to Denny's for Thanksgiving dinner and then spent the rest of the day at the movies. We had a wonderful lunch right here." "John, why on earth did you go to Denny's?" "It's not about the food, Mary, it's about the company. I can't believe that a 62-year-old man can't be polite to a guest I invited to our house. I would never treat someone you invited like that. I told you that I would not be in this house at the same time as him ever. I didn't mean only when he was there to take care of your so-called needs. I meant always, and you knew it but did it anyway. It was just dinner, John, maybe for you," I said, and then raised the newspaper between us, signaling the end of the conversation. About 5 minutes of silence passed before Anna, my own daughter and an obvious traitor to the cause, knelt next to me on the floor. "Dad, please try to understand that he means a lot to her. She doesn't love him or anything, but she cares about him and didn't want him to be alone on the holiday. And you don't see a problem in the fact that mom's friend becomes part of the family. He's not part of the family, Dad, but he is the person in her life, a friend like any other friend. I knew it was a lost cause. Course, Anna, I understand. I hope so, Dad. See you later. After kissing me on the cheek, Anna left. Mary didn't appear again that evening, and when I finally got up from my chair and went into the bedroom, she was already asleep. Thanksgiving seemed to be a turning point, at least in some respects. Shows of affection were virtually non-existent, as Mary and I became more like neighbors than anything else. Mary believed that her decision to take a lover was justified because I was not doing a good job, and she viewed my reaction as selfish and ego-driven. I regarded Mary's choice as a betrayal of our marriage and life together. I managed to treat her kindly and we communicated as we needed to, but the love that had been built over 38 years of relationship was fading. When Mary said she needed to do some last-minute shopping on Christmas Eve, I said nothing. Even though she hadn't needed to do last-minute shopping in years, I knew where she was going and didn't have to follow her or track her phone. The look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. Whether she just wanted to exchange gifts or wanted something more, I didn't know, but I knew that she would have a private celebration with him on New Year's Eve. I kissed my wife at midnight, although this kiss did not have the same passion as in past years. Mary was disappointed that she couldn't express anything to James, but she still called him the next day to wish him a happy new year. With Valentine's Day approaching, I had planned a nice dinner at an upscale seafood restaurant, and Mary was excited about the prospect of the holiday. This made her think that perhaps I was returning to her, but I was overcome by vague suspicions. Mary's desire to spend the holidays with her lover got me thinking about Valentine's Day. It was Valentine's Day after all, and I doubted Mary would let it pass without seeing James. So I decided to leave the office for a while and watch my home. I parked at the end of the street, so I had a clear view of the front door and surrounding streets. Sure enough, I saw James park around the corner and walk down the sidewalk. I half expected him to just walk into the house, but he knocked and waited for Mary to let him in. I doubted they were just going to talk. It was their personal Valentine's Day celebration. Apparently they weren't just intimate buddies anymore. Dinner that evening was a low-key affair. Mary approached me with a positive attitude and hope of rekindling her relationship with her husband, but the high spirits I had shown over the last few days had disappeared. Mary was disappointed but tried to make the best of it, wondering what could have caused such a change. Since we didn't have small children, Easter was mostly just an excuse for a big family dinner. We had a few eggs around the yard, but they were big plastic eggs that usually contained a gift card or something. It was just a little fun to get into the holiday spirit. To my relief, James wasn't invited. Mary had at least complied with that request after the Thanksgiving fiasco, but I knew that she came to him on days other than Saturday morning, and perhaps more often than I realized she did it for Valentine's Day, and of course she could do it on other days as well. After the morning's festivities ended, I announced that I was going to lie down. True, I was a little tired, but nothing that I couldn't handle. I just wanted to avoid having to sit and deal with the family that betrayed me. I couldn't avoid them completely, but I could limit the amount of time I spent with them. It was a beautiful day, and I opened one of the windows overlooking the backyard. A cool breeze rushed into the room. Unfortunately, so did Mary and Anna's conversation. "So how's James doing?" Anna asked, not too loud. Sage. Not too loud. "I don't want your father to hear." Mary replied. "Okay." Anna replied, lowering her voice, but still loud enough for me to hear. "I just can't believe that my mom has a boyfriend, 10 years younger than me." "He's not my boyfriend, Anna, he just come on." "Mom, you have a night with him 2-3 times a week, and you two also go out to dinner. You might not want to use the word boyfriend, but that's what he is anyway." "Okay, has my boyfriend. I just want to be considerate of your father's feelings. I know, Mom, and I love Dad too, and I don't want him to get hurt, but let's be honest. He's an old man and you're a young woman. He's only 5 years older than me, Anna, in terms of physical age." "Yes, but you're an active woman and he can barely get through the day without taking a nap. You deserve it. Honestly, I'm a little jealous that you're going through the whole dating process again. Does anyone else know? Is it more than just Saturday mornings? Leo, Eric, and Rebecca. No, I don't introduce girls to this. Does everyone agree with this? Leo and Eric don't see this as a problem. They agree with me that you should be allowed to meet your needs, since Daddy can't do that. Rebecca is the only one who thinks it's wrong, but she doesn't want to see Daddy get hurt, so she promises she won't say anything. What Dad doesn't know won't hurt him. Hearing about the depths to which my wife's betrayal had sunk and how my daughter wholeheartedly supported her mother having a boyfriend, I felt the last traces of love and affection for them leave my heart. Although I made many preliminary preparations, I refrained from going too far. Out of love for my family and my long marriage to Mary, now was the time to begin the final process. In earnest, I slowly closed the window and climbed into bed. Over the next couple of months, my relationship with my wife and daughter deteriorated. Things weren't any better with my son and son-in-law, but I tried to improve my relationship with Rebecca and my granddaughters. Based on what Anna had said about Rebecca and my belief that the granddaughters were simply too young to truly understand the situation, I hoped for the best Mother's Day arrived. Every family has its own traditions. For our family, Mother's Day was an upscale brunch at a local French-themed restaurant. The food and service were excellent and the prices reflected this. When the children were little, I took my family to celebrate Mother's Day with my wife. When the children grew up and began working, they took responsibility for the celebration. They did the same for Father's Day. The peculiarity of our family was that the other parent did not participate in the celebration. Years ago, I stopped going to Mother's Day and Mary stopped going to Father's Day. They allowed the children to celebrate with the respective parent and express their feelings later. But I had a feeling brought on by the events of the past few months. So, although I usually used my free time to read or do something else, this morning I got dressed and went to the restaurant. Mary had been gone for about 30 minutes, so I knew she would be there. I had no intention of participating in the brunch or even making anyone aware of my presence. Moreover, I doubted that I would have to get out of the car at all. I drove around the restaurant parking lot, easily finding Anna and Eric's car, then Mary's car, then Leo and Rebecca's car. I was beginning to hope I was wrong until I saw what I was looking for, but hoped I wouldn't find. Hidden in the corner of a parking space, James's car. I had seen it quite a few times and remembered the number my wife, or maybe my daughter, invited her lover, her boyfriend, whatever, to take part in a family event, knowing that I would not be there. Despite everything that had been done so far and despite the fact that my love for my wife had essentially faded away, this new betrayal made me furious. If earlier I was going to moderate my actions, now I had no such intentions. I returned to my home, picked up my golf clubs and went to the local golf course. I used several buckets, losing count. By the end I was exhausted. The blows were not very far and not very accurate, but I felt better. I drove home ready to take a nap. They considered me useless, unable to go through the day without sleep. I would allow them to continue to think so. Mary greeted me. As I walked through the door, I wondered if she was having a private celebration with her boyfriend. Although in truth, I didn't care anymore. It all still hurt, but it wasn't anything to worry about. As I entered the house, I wondered if she would admit to inviting James. If given the opportunity, how did you celebrate Mother's Day with your family? I asked, putting a slight emphasis on family. That was wonderful, John. Thanks for asking. I had a great time with the kids. Mary replied she didn't mention James. Did this mean that she and the rest of the family considered him family, or did she simply decide not to mention him? I decided I would never know. I went to my bedroom and dozed off. Soon the 4th of July arrived again. Mary was always in a good mood, and I of course knew why. She had stuck by her side for almost a year now, and no doubt Mary thought she had succeeded. She had a husband who supported her and a young guy with whom she met several times a week. Her life, in her opinion, was almost perfect. James started a new job where he worked in the evenings, which allowed him to spend a few half-days a week with Mary. They didn't pay that much, but she wasn't with him for his money. Now wanting to rub my nose in it, they avoided Mary's bedroom on all but Saturday mornings. This meant they used James's apartment or borrowed a place from friends. If that wasn't an option. After all, he had roommates. The hardest thing for her was to exclude James from participating in the events. She didn't bring it up with me again and didn't think I would change my mind. That was the only thing she was unhappy about. First, She hoped and still hopes that James and I could become, if not friends then at least buddies. They gave her different things, so in her opinion they were not competitors. She spent her days with James and her evenings and weekends with me. She couldn't understand why it couldn't work. So reluctantly she didn't invite James to the family barbecue and fireworks trip. The family arrived early to help prepare the meal. I tried to be visible and active so that there would be no doubt later that I was tired. I watched the crowd carefully wondering if Mary would drag James through, but he never showed up. As the day wore on, I pretended to get more and more tired. Okay, not all of it was pretend, but a lot of it definitely was. Maybe I was pretending too much, because Mary seemed to notice and came towards me. "Honey, why don't you lie down and relax before the fireworks?" she suggested softly. The hardest thing about this whole situation was that I knew that Mary loved me and truly cared about me, and that made it even harder to do what I was about to do. "I'm not going to the fireworks, so I decided to just enjoy the day with my family and go to bed early." I replied, "You're sure you missed it last year, but before that you always looked forward to it." Mary noted, sincerely worried, that I would miss it again. "Sure. I guess I'm just getting old, but I'm sure everyone will have fun without me." "Okay, if you're sure." As soon as she left me, Mary immediately went in search of Anna. I watched as she made her way through the crowd looking for her daughter. Mary, he suddenly realized, was trying to figure out if he was planning to attend the fireworks, and there was only one reason that could take priority. She planned to invite James to join them for the fireworks. Not that it mattered, but the latest betrayal stung painfully as the evening wore on. The guests began to leave until only family members remained. Mary, Anna, Sam and Eric stopped by at one point and asked if I was sure I wanted to join them for the fireworks, and all expressed that they would miss me. When I said I would stay home, I saw it for what it was and knew my family was lost to me. As the family prepared to leave for the fireworks, I swallowed my anger and tried to communicate with each family member. No matter what happened over the past year, I had many fond memories of their time together, and I would miss those times. I hugged my granddaughters the tightest of all. I watched melancholy as the family happily climbed into Anna's minivan. It was clear that no one even missed me. I put them out of my mind and continued going about my business. The family returned a little later than usual, giving Mary time to be alone with James. He thanked them for the invitation, especially since he had no family or close relatives nearby, although no one other than Mary spent much time with him. They came to consider him part of the extended family and were delighted with how happy he made Mary. They said goodbye in the park, since he obviously couldn't go back to the house with them. As they entered the house, they tried to be quiet. Not wanting to disturb me, they poured themselves a drink and gathered around the dining room table to chat for a while. It must have been 30 to 45 minutes before Mary remembered me and asked her son to go check on me. Sam obediently got up from the table and slowly walked into the bedroom. He didn't find me asleep in bed, but he discovered that the bedspread had been pulled back, revealing snow-white sheets underneath. Mary always insisted on white sheets on these sheets. Sam found my wedding ring and a flash drive. This did not bode well. "He's not there," Sam said, leaving the bedroom. "What do you mean?" "He's not there," asked his mother. "That's right, Mom. No one was sleeping in the bed, and I found this on the sheets next to his pillow." Not fully believing her son's words, Mary went into the bedroom and looked for herself, and it was true, the bed was unused and there was no sign of her husband. When she returned to the living room, Eric was already connecting the flash drive to the laptop to see what was on it. When the contents became visible, there was only one file in the list, although it was quite large. Eric looked at his mother and she nodded at him. He double-clicked the file and the computer's video player came to life. Eric expanded the image to full screen. At first it was just a blank wall, but they could hear voices. After a few seconds, I walked up to the camera. "Is there a recording going on?" I asked the invisible operator. "Yes," answered a female voice. I looked at the camera. "Good evening, everyone. If I timed it right, you're watching this a little after 10 p.m. Having just returned from the fireworks show, everyone reflexively looked at the clock next to them and saw that it was almost 11:00 p.m. because they hadn't bothered to check on me when they got home. Right now, as you watch this video, I am sitting on a plane that is flying through the air and will not land until it is far beyond the borders of the United States. In case you're wondering, I won't be back." Mary screamed, breaking into tears. "You betrayed me." The video continued. "Each of you, my wife, who had my love and support for over 40 years, who had never had to work a day in her life except raising her children, cast me aside like trash for a guy half my age, and when I had the audacity to object, she turned the whole family against me. I would have thought that 38 years of loyalty, dedication, faithfulness, and support would mean more to you, Mary. I think I deserve it. Your desires, and I think we all know that they were actually wants, not needs, had to take a back seat to my feelings. It was bad enough that you did this behind my back, but the fact that you forced my family to side with you was even worse. That day, I felt like I had been stabbed in the heart 7 times. Anna, your betrayal was as bad as your mother's betrayal. Growing up, you were always Daddy's girl. We did everything together. The fact that you supported your mother in cheating on me, in committing adultery against her own father, broke my heart even more than what your mother did. Even if I had not heard from you that I, an old man who does not deserve a faithful wife, my heart would be completely broken." I said out loud, "Never. Sam, Eric, you must be the biggest idiots in the world. Do you even realize that you just gave your wives permission to cheat on you?" Sam, "I doubt Rebecca is capable of this, but some of what I heard from my daughter should concern you, Eric. All she has to do is find a reason to say that you are not satisfying her and she will leave. She has already told her mother how jealous she is of her." Eric looked at Anna, who shook her head as my words poured out of the speaker. "No, baby, I never said that, and I wouldn't do that. It's not like you can object." ID continued. "You already said that this is quite normal for Mary. Unless you meant that it was only normal because it wasn't you who was cheated on. Right, Eric, were you completely okay with cheating on someone else? I bet when your turn comes you won't be so accommodating, and I'd bet Anna is already in denial that she would do something like that. But ask her if she thinks it would be wrong for her. Why was it okay for her mother? Her answer will be eloquent." Eric paused the video and looked at his wife. "You said that you were jealous of your mother," he finally asked. "I don't remember exactly what I said. I only know that I was glad that my mother was going through the stage of a new relationship or acquaintance in order to find out for herself again. So do you want to get to know someone again?" Eric continued, "No, baby, please don't make too much of it. Okay, I love you and don't want to be with anyone else. Only if I can no longer perform right, honey. Can we talk about this later? We need to focus on Mom now. Okay, but this is not the end." Eric pressed play again and I continued. "I didn't want to stay in a marriage in which my wife was cheating on me every week, and I certainly wasn't going to stay once I found out it was increasing to several times a week. Sorry, Mary, but you were nearly as reserved and delicate as you thought. How about inviting him to celebrate Mother's Day? It was simply tasteless, as you might expect. I have no intention of telling you where I went, but I can assure you that even if you find me, there is nothing you can do about it. I should also mention the financial situation that I have left for you. I took most of our money because I intend to live the rest of my life in retirement as a reward to myself for putting everyone else first for most of my adult life. Mary, I left you a house which, as you know, is paid for and worth several 10,000. My lawyer will contact you and help you complete the sale if you want. I also left about 30,000 in the bank. That's 1,000 for every good year. You gave me, I'm afraid, no loans in the last 12 months. None of you need to worry about me taking the rest of our assets, including investment accounts. It gave me a nearly 8-fig bank balance, so I'll be fine. Not that I really thought any of you would care. I think the way I've been treated over the last year clearly shows how you all still feel about me. Oh, and if you're worried about me spending my golden years alone, don't worry about that either. I already have a companion, and she is sitting next to me on the plane right now. Let me introduce you to Deborah." A face corresponding to a female voice appeared from behind the camera and entered the frame. "Tension. This is Deborah. She is the one who will help me spend your inheritance." "Hi," everyone said, the attractive brunette who looked to be in her mid-50s as she waved back at the camera. "Deborah and I have been keeping close company for about the last 4 to 5 months. After I told her what my wife was doing nothing special, just spending a lot of time together and confirming how compatible we are. But Mary, you probably remember Deborah, you've met her several times. We have worked together for over 30 years, ever since she was hired in the marketing department. She took early retirement to join me in my new home. We have been close friends all this time, and the best part is that her needs are nothing more than a desire for intimacy. Hugs, kisses, and maybe a few other personal things are more than fine for her. I'm looking forward to it. Everyone looked at Mary to see how she took this revelation, and it was clear from the look on her face that she didn't take it well. Eric paused the video. "Mom, are you okay?" Sam asked. "No, Sam, I'm definitely not okay. But let's just get this over with." Eric started the video again. "Mary," I said, my tone becoming more serious. "I loved you from the very day we met. If someone had told me that you could treat me like that, I would have knocked them out before they finished speaking. I looked forward to spending our final years together and receiving visits from our children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren. I'm so disappointed that your physical needs ruined this for us. For me, for your sake, I hope it was worth it. You should have enough money to last a long time, especially if you sell the house if you need more. I'm sure the children who supported your romance will also want to support you financially. Now that I think about it, was my money that got them through call and good jobs. So I guess I have a lot to do with that. It was a terrible year and things were getting worse. I at least knew about the extra time you spent with him every week. I could have ended this months ago, but I like the idea of declaring my independence on Independence Day, so I waited. I guess there's some part of me that will always love you, or at least what we had. I wish things were different, but somewhere along the way you forgot that our marriage is us, not you and me. I've always tried not to make choices that would benefit me and hurt you, like you did with James. You probably thought that I would somehow come to terms with this, maybe because before I always sacrificed myself for you. I don't know. It doesn't matter for what reason it's done and cannot be undone for your sake. I hope it was worth it. Goodbye, Mary. I will miss you and what we could have had." I looked straight into the camera when the screen went dark. Everyone in the room was in tears, although some more than others. Neither of them thought that Mary and James's relationship would alienate me. In the past I had always given way to Mary, and they thought that would be the case this time as well. Deep down, no one thought I had the guts to do anything other than accept it. They all stayed overnight at Mary's house. She needed their support. Rebecca was cleaning the kitchen. When the phone rang, the only calls she received were from her husband, Sam, or some unwanted calls. She looked at the screen. The number was blocked. This seemed quite strange to her, and she decided to answer. "Hello, Rebecca, this is John." "Oh God, John. How are you? Where are you?" "I'm fine, Rebecca, just fine. I won't say anything about where I am for now. More importantly, how are you?" "I'm fine, Dad, but I have news. I am pregnant." "Congratulations." "For what period?" "Just a couple of months. We found out about this right after you left." "I can't believe you've been gone for almost 3 weeks. Yes, time flies, by the way. Thanks for calling me Dad. I thought I had lost this title, not with me. You know, Dad, I owe you an apology. I had to speak up when everyone confronted you that day and you asked our opinion. I had to say that I thought it was wrong, but I was new to the family and was afraid I had a feeling, but I don't think it would have mattered anyway." Mary and Anna seemed eager for this to happen. "Consider yourself forgiven." "Thank you, Dad. This was very important to me, especially since I hoped to have both grandfathers in my child's life." "Will you be in his life?" "We see, honey. I'm not going back to the States, but maybe we can work something out. I would really like to see you and the baby. So how are things going there?" In a word, tense. Mary is not herself most of the time, although this does not stop her from seeing James several times a week. Anna and Eric are having problems. They're keeping it a secret, but I think your comments about her having a reason to cheat on him hit a nerve. "How are you and Sam?" "We are fine. We're still just getting started in our marriage, so it's still fresh. I think Anna and Eric have been married for so long. I don't know. Maybe it just makes them both a little more cautious. The girls, however, are devastated." "Is it true? This surprises me. You guys have always been so close. They miss spending time with you. They still don't think that a little casual intimacy is a big deal, but they understand that doing it when you're first dating is different than when you're married." I understand. I noticed a clear influence from Anna when they responded, listen, could you please gather everyone at your place tonight? I think I'm ready to talk to them. I don't think that will be a problem. Dad, then well, talk that evening. The whole family gathered in Sam and Rebecca's living room. Rebecca made it clear that James was not invited. She made sandwiches and everyone ate some, but was too preoccupied to eat much. At 8:00 the phone rang and Rebecca put it on speaker. Hi Dad, all here. Thank you, honey. Just so. Everyone knows Deborah is in the room with me too. Let's all try to be polite and have a conversation rather than start an argument. Do you agree? The assembled family members expressed general agreement. Fine. I thought we should talk, but wanted to wait until some time had passed. Of course, I contacted Rebecca first. I did this because some things I overheard made me think she wasn't as okay with as the rest of you. Sam, congratulations on your baby. Thank you, Dad. I will try to live up to the standards of fatherhood that you set, and I don't just say that, as they say, the best thing you can do for your children is to love their mother. Remember this and you will succeed, Allison, Julia. Yes, Grandpa, his granddaughter said practically in unison. Girls. I was disappointed that you supported your grandmother in this, but your aunts, Rebecca and Deborah, convinced me that you may have been under undue pressure and that you lack the life experience to understand the dynamics of adulthood and a 38-year marriage. I still have your emails and phone numbers, so we can talk about this later, if you don't mind, of course. Grandpa, Allison replied, we just miss you. I miss you too. Why don't you go and find something to do while everyone else is talking? The girls said goodbye and went about their business before leaving. They still stopped and hugged their grandmother, so I continued. Does anyone have anything? They're just dying to say, John, honey. Please. Mary began, surprising no one. Please come back. We can get through this. If you had told me that you were really gonna leave me, we could have worked it out. Why has it gone so far, Mary? I told you I wouldn't accept this and you turned to your family for support. Then you started inviting him to family events and seeing him several times a week. You replaced me with him when you and I were barely roommates. You let it happen and I finally had enough, but you didn't say anything else. I thought you would come to terms with it, realized that it was just something I did. It drove a wedge into our marriage and there was no other way out. But this from the moment I found out what you were doing and you chose him over me. Our marriage was doomed. I'm so sorry, Mary whispered. Sorry, Mary, can't we? No, Mary, we can't. Even if I wanted to and I don't. I made a commitment to Deborah and I intend to keep it. What about your obligation to me? You took it first. Yes, it is, and I would still be there doing it, but as far as I understand, when you broke yours, you freed me from yours and gave me the opportunity to take on a new one, which is what I did. Everything around was silent, and only the sounds of Mary's sobs broke the silence. Mary the first said quietly, I'm sorry, but there's no point in having this conversation, whether you wanted it or not. You threw me aside. There's no turning back without another word. Mary stood up and left the room to take refuge in Anna and Eric's room. Anna attacked, very nice, Dad. Did you call just to hurt your mom and make her cry? All because your ego couldn't handle another man making her feel better than you. I guess that's how you see it, Anna. Eric, how's your ego doing? Is it ready to accept that another man will make your wife feel better than you? Anna suddenly stopped her attack under her husband's gaze. Throughout their marriage, Anna was the dominant partner and Eric, like many husbands, tried to get along with her. But over the past few weeks a significant shift had occurred, and Anna realized that her marriage was in serious danger. You can't support another woman's right to cheat on her husband without feeling at least a little guilty by association. No, John, that's definitely not true, and you were right. I never thought about it in those terms. After all this, my wife and I had some pretty serious problems. I understand, and let me say this for what it's worth, fight for your marriage before it's too late. You love each other, but have begun to take each other for granted. I noticed this before all this confusion started. Don't let this be the end-all be-all, but let it be a catalyst for change. You are a team. Remember this. Mary didn't do this. There was a long silence, mainly because at this point no one had anything else to say. Then, in a voice almost like that of a little girl, Anna said, Dad, is it okay if I talk to you alone? If everyone else doesn't mind, then I don't mind either. Anna looked around. No one objected, so she picked up the phone and went into the spare room, closing the door. Dad, I'm scared. Eric talked about divorce and at least counseling. What should I do? You'll fix everything, Anna. Here's what you'll do. Your girls are grown up, at least for the most part. Now, put that time you spent raising them back into your marriage. This is not free time, as your mother believed. Remember that you are not his boss. You are his partner. He's really angry. Once he started looking at it like I was giving myself permission to cheat on him. He got so angry. He constantly snaps at me, and I know he wonders if I've already done something. Did you do it? No, Daddy. No, but I don't know how to convince him of this. All you can do is make sure there is no cause for suspicion in the future. If you do this, questions about the past should disappear. Dad, I'm really sorry. Isn't there some way to fix this? I mean, you and Mom. It's too late for us, honey. But not for you. Okay, Daddy, I love you. I love you too. This family story is filled with twists and emotional conflicts. Subscribe to my channel and don't miss a single emotional beat.